Hi, my name is Jetta Goff, and for my giant project, my giant is Anne Sullivan. Some background on why I chose Anne Sullivan is I found her story to be very extraordinary and very inspiring. That she has helped me want to become a better teacher just by reading her story. So, Anne Sullivan was born in Massachusetts in 1866. And earlier years, she was the oldest of five children. Her parents were Irish immigrants and they had escaped the Great Famine. The Great Famine was responsible for many deaths due to starvation, lack of shelter, and clothing. At the age 5, Anne had gotten an infection in her eye that caused most of her eyesight to go away, which I can't begin to try to relate to. I can't imagine not being able to see at the age 5. That's such a critical growing point in life. So, Anne, her mother died when she was 8 years old, and because of this, her father wasn't able to support the family financially, and I can't imagine him trying to nurture five children. So he had sent off Anne and her younger brother Jimmy to a poorhouse in Tewksbury. And the poorhouse had very poor conditions, you could say. Her brother died shortly after being sent to the poorhouse because he had some hip issues and because of the conditions in the poorhouse. Because of the poorhouse, it kind of made Anne believe that life was to be primarily cruel. And what a sad way for a little girl at such a young age to perceive life. So I think once we go on about her accomplishments, it's amazing to see that her background in the poorhouse has contributed to her accomplishments because of that rage and that anger because of her childhood. It helped her to motivate to become a better person and to accomplish. So in the poorhouse, there was a library, and this library was very critical to Anne in her childhood. Anne had convinced the other residents in the house to read to her. Due to her eye infection, she was slightly blind and she could not read to herself. The library increased Anne's desire to learn, and in the library, she found out that there were schools meant for the blind, and being blind herself, she's like, this is right up my alley. So I can't imagine what an exciting day that was for her. One day there was board members coming to inspect the poorhouse and their conditions and such. And Anne boldly went up to one of those board members and said, I want to go to school. Growing up, I never really loved school, so I admire her for her desire to gain an education and to learn. And little did we know that she was going to have a huge effect on us nowadays because of her philosophies and her lasting impression she left. In 1880, Anne attended school. Anne was very behind academically compared to her classmates. It was hard for Anne to catch up to them because she didn't have eyesight, but due to some surgeries in her eyes, she was able to gain most of her eyesight back, and because of that, she began to study and read, and her hard work paid off, and she was eventually at the same level of her classmates and slowly became more educated than them. Anne had a very rebellious spirit and a very sharp tongue. I can relate to her in that. Due to her patient and very persistent teachers, Anne was able to grow immensely academically, and Anne graduated at age 20 and even gave the valedictorian address. And I'm going to read that to you because I find it so moving. It says, fellow graduates, duty bids us go forth into active life. Let us go cheerfully, hopefully, and earnestly. And set ourselves to find a special part. And when we have found it, willingly and faithfully perform it. For every obstacle we overcome, every success we achieve, tends to bring man closer to God and make life more as he would have it. I love that she addresses God in this I feel that every time we succeed and we are progressing, we are becoming closer to God and we are becoming who He wants us to be. Anne met Helen Keller. And this is such a pivotal point in her life. At age 20, Anne was hired to be Helen Keller's governess. Helen Keller was blind and deaf. You can imagine what a challenge it was to teach a child with such unique circumstances. Anne, growing up blind herself, was the first person to give insight into the closed off life Helen was living. Anne used a unique way of helping Helen learn. She would take Helen's hand and trace letters that would create words, and then soon she would help her connect the words with objects, and it helped her. So she got a faucet and she placed one of Helen's hands underneath the running water, and in the other palm she wrote down the word water, and that made a connection with Helen. And I feel like this is a very pivotal point, not only in Helen's life, but in the teaching field as well. It showed that we can think outside the box. We can get down to our students' level and really appreciate what they're going through and help them discover a way they can learn just for themselves. Helen parents had sent her off to Perkins School, and Anne went with her. And from the day they met, Helen and Anne were inseparable, and they remained together until Anne's death in 1936. Some of the contributions that Anne made, she changed the way students with disabilities were looked upon. Her teaching philosophy was based on making learning active and enjoyable. Many teachers strive to do this because of Anne. She showed how a teacher should care about their students. I personally find it so much more enjoyable learning from a teacher who I know that they have the best interests for me in their mind. How Anne has affected me is that through Anne's examples of being such a great teacher, I believe that my past teachers that I have had have exemplified her. I had Mrs. Shelsky when I was in 7th grade, and she had cancer. And despite her disability, she still tried her very best to teach the way any other teacher would teach, and she went beyond what was expected of her. And because of her, I want to become a teacher. I want to pursue that. After my 7th grade year was her last year teaching, and she had passed away due to breast cancer. And it was such an amazing thing to go to her funeral to see all the impact she has made. And I hope that one day I will be as an successful teacher as her. I hope that you have enjoyed learning about Anne Sullivan. Thank you.